Bonjour, I am the Moonlit Page Turner. Grab your treat, grab your tea, and let's talk books. For this month's reads, we are traveling to Cameroon. Cameroon is located in West Central Africa. It's surrounded by multiple countries, which will come up in our readings. And the word Cameroon, which I found out recently, actually comes from the Portuguese word for prawn. In the 16th, 17th century, there was Portuguese explorers. They were exploring the Wari River, and maybe they found prawns there. I'm not 100% sure, but they decided to name the area prawns. And then that name got transferred to the mountain region that's nearby. And then 1884, Germany annexes the land. And they keep the name. Obviously, it's Germanized. But then after World War I, Germany loses. The land then gets split up into the Allied powers, and the area of Cameroon gets divided between the French and the British. So from 1916 to 1960, they are colonized by the French and the British. Then the French portion of Cameroon breaks away and gets their independence, and they're followed a year afterwards by the British section, although some of the British parts of Cameroon ended up deciding to join Nigeria, which is to the north of Cameroon. So that's kind of like the history of the region when it comes to obviously colonial influence. And this is super important in the two books that I chose to read. Both are fiction. You have the British and French division in the country is going to be really important in the short story collection of Your Madness, Not Mine. And then the influence of the French is really important in the story of the Houseboy. Before we get into this month's reads, let's get into this month's treat. And I feel like this series not only is books around the world, but it's also fried dough around the world, because I have yet another fried dough, and this one's from Cameroon. It's actually in a lot of French colonized countries, but in Cameroon they call it Gateau, which in French means cake. And so they're kind of like donut holes. It's just fried dough. This one has nutmeg mixed in the dough. I added some cinnamon sugar on top, and I think if I were to make this again, I would probably also add just a smidge of powdered sugar. But here we go. It's good, it's light, it's fluffy. I did learn from the Cambodia disaster that I needed to make sure my dough was fried pretty dark, like hot oil all the way around, so that way my donut would fry all the way through. But yeah, it's pretty good. I'm going to start with The Houseboy, and this is by Ferdinand Oyono. And this book, I mean, it's a pretty short book. I will tell you that this book was depressing the whole way through. So you can read this in one setting. I don't recommend it because of our protagonist has an awful life and nothing ever really works out for him. So I'm kind of just going to spoil the book for you mostly, but in case you're interested, it's not that it's written poorly, it's just that this book is so sad. We start actually we are in Spanish Guinea, which is now Equatorial Guinea, which is right below Cameroon. And there is a French man there vacationing, and he is called upon because he speaks French, and they found a French man or someone who speaks French that's dying. And so he's called to come and talk to this man. It turns out that the man that's dying is our protagonist, and this is Tondi Andua is the main character, and he is dying in Spanish Guinea, and next to him he has two notebooks, and we end up reading those notebooks to hear his story. But we do find out at the very beginning of the book that he is gonna die. And then you go into notebook, it's separated by notebook 1 and notebook 2. Notebook 1 starts with the fact that his father is abusive towards him, and so he leaves his father's house and he goes to live in a church where he is not necessarily the servant of, but pretty much the servant of Father Gabriel. Father Gabriel seems like a nice guy. He is the only nice European man, woman European person that we will meet this entire story. This again is very colonized Cameroon with on the French side. Father Gabriel, who again is the nicest European person in this book. We do meet other Cameroon characters. He dies tragically in a motorcycle accident, and so Tundi then has to leave the church, and he is actually assigned to be the houseboy, hence the title, of a character that's known as the Commandant. We don't find out the Commandant's name, he's just referred as the Commandant throughout the entire book. Obviously he's French, he comes to Cameroon, and he kind of gets along with Tundi. There's a couple of really weird incidences between the two before the Commandant's wife shows up. And as soon as the Commandant's wife shows up, everything goes to hell. She is not a nice person, and they become like adversaries. Not on Tundi's, it's not Tundi's fault that they become adversaries, but the Commandant wife is like such an awful person. That leads to this big conspiracy that happens where Tundi then has to flee Cameroon to save his life, and then we find out what happens to him from the very beginning of the book, where he dies with his 2 notebooks next to him. So it's a pretty short read. It's written pretty well. It's just sad the entire way through. There's no like happy parts for Tundi. There's some other good characteristics, like Tundi's sister is involved and she becomes really emotional with the stuff that happens to Tundi, but it's just altogether super depressing. The second book that I chose for Cameroon was one of the first like women writers of Cameroon, and that is Makuchi, I think is how you pronounce her name. She's got a longer name. It's what she writes as though. And this is called Your Madness, Not Mine Stories of Cameroon. And this is mainly about women. There are 9 short stories. They are not interconnected, so you can read them in whatever order. When I started to read it, the first couple stories reminded me of the Afghanistan book, My Pen is the Wing of a Bird. And it made me a little worried because reading that book, I was like, oh, those women are not okay. And same thing for this one. I was like, oh no, what did I get myself into? Because these women are being attacked, like awful things are happening to them, not okay. But they end up becoming a little bit more okay as you read through the book. As a collection, I'm usually hit or miss with a collection of short stories, so I did actually like most of the stories in here. And it's a good peek into the life in Cameroon, and in particularly into the division of the French and the English part of it, and the British influence. So much so that I'm going to read to you a little bit of the introduction, and this is by Eloise A. Briere. What does it mean to be a Cameroonian woman and to write in English? Makuchi is a Beba woman from Cameroon in Central Africa. She writes in English, not the King's English, not Gandhi's English, nor Uncle Sam's English. What is it like writing in English of a former British colony? What is experience like putting on a, is it that it is an experience like putting on a straitjacket bequeathed to the Beba by British colonizers of West Cameroon? Is it the continuing use of Western language as well as Western standards? Religious beliefs and technologies in former colonies such as Cameroon, a measure of successive colonization, has the unique Beba perspective on the world been forever silenced by the global post-colonial interest, those whose watchdog agencies speak for Cameroonians using the abstract universalist language that inevitability disfigures and shortchanges those they describe. And language here becomes really important. And that has also been kind of a common theme throughout many of the books in this series about the influences of colonization and how that affects the language that's used when language is imposed on your culture. This is actually written in English, so it's not translated. And she does go on in the introduction to talk about the choice of not using translation. There is parts later on in the book where she uses pidgin, which is common in Cameroon. It is common in some of the other colonialized cultures. If you've ever been, usually pidgin, I typically think of like Hawaiian pidgin. This one is a little bit different. Same thing with some other colonized places. They also have their own form of pidgin. So when I was reading the pidgin in here, it's not translated, and I definitely had to focus a lot more on what was being said versus what was happening in the story. In the same stories, she also has French, untranslated. Now, I took French in high school many years ago. I can still read a little bit of it and understand some of it. So I was able to understand what was happening. I think if you don't know any French, you're going to be totally lost. The sentiment of what's happening is still there, but it's like a second meaning when you know what is actually being said. And there's no translation. So for me, I felt like that was a misgiving. It should have at least been kind of something at the end where you could have looked up what it was as like a second reading, so you don't need like a translation. Obviously now you can use like AI and things like that to translate for you. But I think that choice is also like a wink of what she is seeing in the division of her country, where there's this whole, one of the stories in there is this car accident where one side speaks French and the other side speaks English. And that's kind of looking at, we're in the same country, but we don't speak the same languages. So that is the feeling that I got from the story. But knowing what they were saying in French has the second deeper meaning to it. So I think for me and my understanding of it, I would have preferred a translation, but I kind of get to see where she's going with the division in it by not including that as well. So that it's special for certain people that know how to read it. That being said, I think in the back, it even says like women's writing in Cameroon has so far been dominated by Francophone writers. So people that specifically write in French. Short stories in this collection represent the yearning and the vision of an Anglophile woman who writes both as a Cameroonian, as a woman whose life had been shaped by the minority status her people occupy with the nation state. Just a little bit of Cameroon history as well. The French part, they were able to develop faster using agriculture, which allowed them to put a stronger school system in, which allowed them to have a higher tiered system into their own countries. They were having more wealth, more opportunities than the English side. So that's where we see the stratus of French over English. But again, there's a nod to like we're a division but not together. That being said, it's some of the crazy stuff happens in this book, but as a collection of stories, I actually really enjoyed this collection. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Next month, we are traveling to Canada, where I have 2 books for us, as well as our first audiobook in this series. If you're interested in what is coming up next or what we have read in the past, please visit us on Goodreads or Instagram. See you then.